I want to know, what's your background?
My background.
What's your background?
All right, so my background was, I grew up in Rhode Island, small town, Smithfield, Rhode Island. Went to Johnson & Wales University, culinary school, moved to Nantucket, moved to Maine, bought a house on a massive plot, 26 acres. And then I really started getting into building cabins, refinishing cabins. That's pretty much all I got.
I have a pretty wild ride as my background. Do you want to hear it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So I was raised on Nantucket, which is an island 30 miles off the coast of Massachusetts. I had a pretty good childhood, Then I was a teen mom, and I was pregnant with Josiah at 17. And we made it through. We went to Brazil. We lived there for a little while. Didn't quite work out, so we moved back to Nantucket. And then I met my partner, Jared, when Josiah was 2.5 years old. And we moved to Rhode Island. Then we moved back to Nantucket. Then we moved to Maine. Then Falmouth. Then Yarmouth. And then finally, we saved enough money to buy a house. And we found this beautiful little house on 26 acres in Dresden. And I think we were just at the right place at the right time. So we bought that house, and I was pregnant with my second child, Hudson. And then COVID hit directly after that. It was March, and we bought the house in December. So everybody had to work from home. I was an esthetician, so our work stopped completely. And I tried to think of ways that I could stay home and make some money from home. Then I was watching a little too much YouTube for my own good, but I came across this adorable little cabin that this guy named Bush Radical built, and I was like, I think we can do that. I am very good at taking risks. I'm not risk averse at all. Calculated risks, but I thought that we could build this. So I spoke to Jared, and we all got those stimulus paychecks, and that was our chance. That was kind of our sign to let's do it. So we bought all the material, we cleared a space out in the back, and started watching that YouTube video step by step, and we followed along and we built it. We were there were some trials and tribulations, but we did it. And Jared didn't think, he thought I was crazy, this wasn't going to work, we're kind of in the boonies, this and that. And we were booked solid that first summer, completely solid. There was maybe one day we were, open. So that was pretty awesome. I always loved glamping and camping and all that, and I knew I couldn't be the only one that liked to do that. So we put it up on Airbnb, and it was a hit. We were booked solid all summer, maybe a day here and there that wasn't booked, but we were blown away. And so with the profits from that tiny cabin, that following winter, we built the A-frame here, and that was even more successful. So it's kind of like a compounding thing. We took the profits from the tiny cabin and the A-frame, and we found a really cheap, dilapidated tiny house for $55,000, and no banks would mortgage it because it was in such poor shape. So we took HELOC out on the house and used the profits from these two cabins to renovate it. We are almost done. We have a little tiny bathroom left to renovate, and then we're going to rent it out as a midterm rental to nurses and traveling professionals and stuff. Because money has always been tight, as a teen mom, it's just what it is. I learned to be very frugal, which I actually prefer, but I do want to create sort of generational wealth so my kids don't have to worry as much. They can, have options in life that maybe I couldn't necessarily have. But ultimately, my goal is to create generational wealth for my kids, and that is kind of where we're at.
How much time overall do you think you spent on the cabins? And how do you feel about the work you guys have done?
Time overall spent in the cabins, I'd say 2020 we started building our first cabin back there. It was called Maple Nook, and that was a 10 by 12 sort of lean-to. And then we built an A-frame, I think 2 years later. So overall, probably 4 years building cabins, refinishing cabins. I mean, I worked every other weekend for the past year, probably 12 hours a day. So that's 24 hours. That's 48 hours a month for a year, whatever that comes out to. And then I spent probably 2 more years building the other cabins. I'd say probably, I don't know, I couldn't say how many hours, but I definitely spent waking up 9 o'clock in the morning, getting home at 7 o'clock at night, and working till midnight out in the cabins probably for a year straight. I would say so. You come up with the math, but it was a lot of hours. Thousands of hours in my head.
What was your favorite experience when working on these cabins?
My favorite experience building these cabins is probably seeing how Jared and I work so well together. He does a lot of the building stuff. I hand him the nails. I hold things up. But we work together pretty well considering some conditions that we've been in. And I think that's pretty amazing for a couple to kind of test your boundaries with each other and see, wow, this is probably, this is a hard thing to do, but we're managing and we're.
And then how do you feel about the work you guys have done?
I think the work was good. We made the first cabin. So I had never built anything pre-2020. I really didn't know. I didn't know how to lift a wrench. I didn't know how to pick up a saw, to be honest. Before we moved out here in 2019, I never used a chainsaw. And, now we mill our own lumber and, harvest our own lumber and chop our own wood for the fireplace all winter long. So, I think the progress has come a long way because, when we first built the cabins, we didn't know what we were doing. So we were sort of following a direction. We saw somebody build some stuff on YouTube, kind of got inspired on it, and then sort of went from there. But, I think going forward, once you start getting into something, I tell a lot of people this, once you get going in something, you start learning the process throughout the process, and you just start to figure out the next step, and you just keep at it, and then you start waking up in the morning thinking about, hey, what's the next thing I got to do? The overall, satisfaction is pretty high. I think we've done a great job. I think both of the cabins that we built from scratch, from the ground up, we cleared the land out, we harvested the trees, burning some of the trees behind us, rented the cabins out. People are still in them. They're not falling into the ground. We bought another dilapidated cabin up north, up in northern Maine, and that place was come a long way. So, like I said, overall, I think the satisfaction is quite high.
Where would you like to see yourself in 5 years? What about 10?
5 years from now, I'll be 42. So, I'm a chef by trade. That's my real job. That's how I actually get a paycheck. So, hopefully I'll have a good promotion with the company I work for here in Maine. And I'm hoping to get a couple more properties that we can buy cheap. If they smell bad, those are the kind of properties I like. So the stinkier the better, because that means it's not costing me too much money to purchase. And if I can get a couple more of those, subsidize the money I have coming in from my regular job, my W-2, that's kind of where I want to be in 5 years. A couple more properties, a couple more rentals, a couple more income properties. And in 10 years, hopefully in 10 years, I'll be 47. So hopefully I'm almost towards the retirement, or, I can sort of choose what I want to do instead of, having to show up to work because I need the paycheck. I can show up to work because I want the paycheck. So, yeah.
What was it like juggling the managing of the cabins, the renovations, and raising an infant, toddler, and a teenager all at the same time?
Well, it was busy. The one cool thing about a teenager is when the baby was a newborn and had long stretches, Josiah would be, in their room playing games or whatever, and I could, leave the baby with him to keep an eye out. But for the most part, I'm lucky to have kids who are very self-reliant. My 4-year-old is very good at independent play, and he would just play all around me as I did turnovers and building. He builds right beside us. He grabs his little hammer and hammers things, and the baby was basically strapped to me the whole time once he grew out of the, sleeping all the time phase. And he's just go with the flow also. And Josiah is such a busy kid. It's almost like, they're not around very much. So I feel like I'm happy about that because it makes me feel like, Josiah's prepared for the real world and being independent. So I don't worry so much about them. But I'm always there if they need me. And Josiah was also a huge help at the new cabin, helping painting and insulation and anything. Honestly, I hate to boast, but I do have the best kids.
Awesome. I think that's a wrap.
Okay. Awesome.